In this episode, which is a two-part episode, I'm going to be interviewing the author J.M. Davis about his new book, Bad English the Third, The Mostly True Tales of a Son of a Brit. And we are also going to be reviewing Sid and Nancy from 1986, which was directed by Alex Cox and starred Gary Oldman and Chloe Webb. And we are going to be touching on how this film influenced the writing of JM's new book. So stick around. Welcome to Robert Bellissimo at the Movies. This is a YouTube video podcast where we explore movies from all over the world and talk about how those stories were told on film, as well as interviews with various industry professionals who work in film, television, and theater. And I want to welcome Michael Davis, who wrote this wonderful book, Bad English the Third, The Mostly True Tales of a Son of a Brit. Michael, welcome. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Robert. It's really an honor for me. I love your work. So,
thanks so much. Thanks so much. And like I said, I really enjoyed the book, and I was actually curious who designed the cover. It's such a great cover.
You know, I paid a company to do that.
Really?
And I was very specific about what I wanted, how I wanted the tone to be.
It's so good. Yeah. I mean, after reading the book, it has the essence of the story. You know, the title is The Mostly True Tales of a Son of a Brit. And after reading the book, I was like, wow, you know, if this is mostly true, it's one hell of a journey. So how much of it is fiction and how much of it is true?
An accurate number would be difficult to gauge, but if I had to choose a number, it'd be somewhere between 75 to 88. Now, it's not all stuff that happened to me. There's some stories I've heard along the way, but I just kind of wove it all together. But I'd say 75% was to 88. Fairly true.
Wow.
With maybe, some flourishes.
And so, we talked on Facebook a little bit about this because when I just Googling you, I found that, so this was originally, your plan was originally to have this be a feature film, right? And then it went into a novel form from there.
This was a 19-year-old's fantasy. And I drove cross country to California with an idea for this book, for a screenplay. And I had these incredible things happen along the way once I got to Hollywood. So it started as a script and got it set up with a production company. We were shopping it around, and you know what? It wasn't a great script, to be honest. I think it had potential, but it just wasn't there yet. It was very amateurish. So opportunity arose. I wrote the book, and then I sat on it for 25 years. Yeah. Wow. Never touched it.
So you wrote this 25 years ago?
No, I wrote it during COVID.
Right. Yeah, because there's the pandemic part of it.
Right.
Yeah.
But really, it hadn't been touched in 25 years. And it's a complete, it's very different. It's very vastly different.
That's incredible. So I know you added the interview segment off the top, which takes place during the pandemic, right, where they're investigating this robbery from the late 80s. So when you say you didn't touch it, I imagine you added the COVID part, but everything else was from the same as 25 years ago, or did you edit it at all?
This was majorly tweaked.
This
was almost from scratch. I just had that script and that first draft I had written 25 years ago, but I never, I really didn't look at it for that long.
So why 20? Why was it on a shelf for so long? Why now, do you think?
It was just killing me, man. It was really just eating at my soul. I just wanted to get it done just to say I got it done, and it's a different era now where you can self-publish. It's fairly easy to do. And that's what I did, man. The COVID hit, I lost my job, and it was just like 25 years ago when I wrote the first draft. Because I lost my job and I had 6 months just to, further and waste. So came to fruition finally, and I'm pretty pleased with it. I mean, you're gonna struggle with, what I could have done here, what I could have done there, but overall, I'm pretty happy with it. It's a goofy little story, and yeah, whatever. If you like it, you like it. You might not.
Well, what I like so much about it is that it's not only is it a coming of age story, but the main protagonist, DJ, is 17-year-old kid, but he's also struggling with his own identity because he's half black, he's half white, he's half Jewish, he's
Throw it all in.
yeah, like he's pretending he's British to this young female, young woman that he falls in love with, but then at the same time he has another girlfriend, and he's goes off to England with his grandfather, and then he finds out that his grand, I don't want to give it all away, but there's so many twists and turns but the core of those twists and this element of DJ trying to figure out who he is was really appealing for me, because I mean that really is that age. I mean, people struggle with that all the time, but in his case, it's not just the fact that he's young and he's trying to discover who he is, but he's facing so many different obstacles and prejudice and conflicts, because people have these impression of him because of the color of his hair or his skin color, but then he's so many things, and so he doesn't quite know where to fit, and he feels that he has to he feels as though he has to pretend he's someone else. So I found that really, really appealing. I mean, was that your experiences growing up that you put in this? Is that part of the story that's true?
Basically, the story was two separate incidences in my life. One was pretending to be English, and the other was going to England by myself. And I kind of wanted to write a story that was like a person that goes to a city but has really no effect on anybody. That was the whole idea. That's how it started out. It was just this guy who kind of maneuvers through London and doesn't really have any great effect on anybody. That was the whole idea. That was my concept. Right. I didn't want one of those Family Ties 2-hour movie in London where they get involved with a jewel robbery, and then here you go, there's a jewel robbery, but a little different. But the Ian character was based on people, and the grandfather, everybody's kind of based on people that I knew in my life. Right. The main character is actually a best friend of mine who died, and that's that's who JEW is, who I dedicate the book to.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
so that's interesting. Wow.
Yeah, so it's two incidences, sort of like a split personality kind of thing. And the way the story will continue to unfold is the more you learn, the less you're like, wait a minute, what? And then everything's gonna sort of be tied up with a nice little bow.
Yeah.
But
sorry,
and
go ahead.
it's all stuff I've lifted from movies that I've seen. I mean, it's not there's originality to it, but it's all visual stuff that I've seen in other stuff. So it's all derivative at the end of the day.
Well, that's what really popped out to me, because I'm a big reader, but I mainly read memoirs and biographies and autobiographies. I've never been one to be as interested in novels, but while I was reading it, I was like, well, this feels like a screenplay. And then I didn't know that it was originally a screenplay until after I read the book. Because, for example, you suddenly are cutting to like when DJ's a kid going to the movie theater with his mother, and then cutting back to the present. And then you're not quite sure at the beginning what this interview in the hotel today is about. And then, of course, later on, what it's about towards the end. So that's very much what they do in films. They'll show something, the audience is not quite sure, and then later on they'll reveal it. And I thought, yeah, it really feels like, it really feels like a script. So I could see the influence from film, certainly.
Everything Tarantino does, who I adore, it's all a little bit derivative. It's just what you remember in your mind and how you're going to present it again. Kind of,
Yeah,
it's like bringing the blues. It's like bringing the blues to England.
right. Well, I can certainly see the Tarantino inspiration, because DJ is constantly reminded of things like, oh, this reminds me of this movie, and this is like this movie. So he's constantly reminded of films, of things he's seeing in the world, and Tarantino's characters do that all the time. I mean, film buffs do that too, because I find myself doing that as well. But yeah, no, I really, really enjoyed it, and the relationships, and just the whole, I mean, I'm a sucker for coming of age stories. So even though it's, like almost, I believe it's about 400, it's over 400 pages, but it just flies by. I mean,
I think it's big print is all it is.
Well, that's true. Yeah. That's another thing. So really, let's say it's 250 or 3.
Right. Yeah.
But still, it flies by.
Shakespeare and Dickens are not rolling over in their graves over this. I can assure you. I can assure you.
Hey, maybe they are.
So the next one will be about 50 and 50%, 50% true, 50% fiction. And then the third one will be more 70% fiction, 25% true.
Right. Okay.
So that's kind of how I've kind of plotted it out.
So yeah, because I was reading that as well. So you have 2 sequels coming out on this. So are those done, or are you still working on them?
No, I'm trying to get them done one a year. So I'm trying to get this one done by December, and then the next one next year.
Okay.
So I think that's a realistic goal, don't you?
No, I don't write books, but I'll take your word for it.
I mean, sure, why not? Neither do I. I just got the one.
I'm sure it's been done. I mean, if the German filmmaker Michael Fassbender could make like 2 movies a year, I'm sure, or
exactly.
More. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
so,
that's
a lot harder. Do it.
That's a lot harder too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, God. And I lived in London for a couple of years, so I was so many of the streets you're talking about, Oxford Circus, Charing Cross Road, going to Buckingham Palace. I was seeing, it was bringing me back to my times there as well. So I was reflecting on my own craziness that I got into the streets of London. So like I said, I really, really enjoyed it. And, in the book, DJ has this encounter where Sid and Nancy comes up. Of course, we're talking about Sid and Nancy today, and DJ says that film changed my life. So what was that? Is that true of you as well, that Sid and Nancy changed your life, or was that just part of it?
You know what, it is, and I'll try not to prolong. I'll try to be brief, but basically I worked in a video store just like Quentin Tarantino. I won't make too many references towards QT tonight, but I worked in a video store. Sid and Nancy came out, and it had been out for a couple days, and a couple invited us to come to their house and watch it. Invited the whole staff. So we went to their house, had some drinks, and I saw a movie like I had never seen before. And by that time, I've been watching a lot of movies, but I had never quite seen anything like Sid. I knew nothing about the Sex Pistols. I knew nothing about, Gary Oldman. And I knew nothing about, I'd never heard a Sex Pistols song. But when that movie was over, I was like that. Yeah. I just found it completely unique, completely unusual. I mean, I didn't know anybody in that movie from Adams, but over the years, and as many times I watched that, I've become friends with a couple of the people from that movie. Yeah, like I've met Cy Richardson. I've gone to shows of his. I've gone to things that he's done with other, about other movies. We're Facebook friends, and I'm Facebook friends with I've never met him, but the Bowery, the drug dealer at the end.
Yes. Yeah.
He's in everything. He's from everything from Walking Dead to Terminator 2. So Xander's got it nailed down.
He looked very familiar. He's one of those, it's one of those faces where you look so familiar, but you can't quite place him. But yeah, I've seen him in other things for sure.
We had a heated conversation on Facebook one night.
Really?
Yeah, it was the first time I'd ever met him. So I was telling him Sid and Nancy was my favorite movie, and he was going to my thing and checking. No, it says Harold and Maude's your favorite movie. I was like, no, they're tied. I swear to God, they're tied.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
but he's really nice. And I've met Alex Cox, the director. I've met the girl that was in the limo when they go to get the drugs with Rockhead. So I've had like really fun, like, the detective at the beginning. Did you call 911? Did you call 911?
Right.
That's Biff Yeager. So he's but anyway, I could.
And how did you come to meet them? Did you just online, or how did like all you? That's quite a few people from this.
well, living in LA, that's one thing.
Okay, right.
And the advent of Facebook, that's another thing. I was trying to produce that movie, so I got just blasted with resumes and pictures and CVs.
I see.
And one of them was the guy that plays the guitar player in the movie, Steve, the guy that plays Steve Jones. So I got to hang out with the girl from, the limousine scene. But getting back to the original question, it kind of did change my life. And when I came up with the concept of taking this one situation where I pretended to be English and met girls, and I took this other situation, I went to London by myself, and all the stuff in London, outside of the heist is pretty much true.
That's what I figured.
Maybe a little obviously a little exaggerated. I never got tied to a bed and whipped by a meter maid. But
oh my God, that scene was so crazy. I was wondering, is this true or not?
Yeah, that's the one I'll let you have. I'll give you that one. I tell everybody that one. I got to save my hide. But so I wanted those, and here's a really funny thing: is I took those two ideas, and I started to write the script, and I moved to LA and all that, whatever. But at one point, my goal, my drunken dream, was to have Alex Cox and Terry Gilliam. They were my two dream directors. And with those two dream directors, they had that huge fight over Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Oh, I don't know that story.
I put that in the universe, I think. Yeah, so Alex Cox was set to write it and direct it, and they had difficulties with Alex again, and they gave it to Terry Gilliam. Alex and his partner sued Terry Gilliam for the script, over the script, of the credits for the script. And they were kind of like, well, this already comes from, a book. So I don't think we can, you got much of a, yeah. So they fought it out in the Writers Guild.
Oh, I did not know that.
I kind of felt like I put that in the universe, Robert. Like, maybe, I don't know. But, so long story short, Sid and Nancy influenced this book in such a way that, I talk about it in the book, like when he meets the French girl and they're walking to the hostel, they kind of talk about it. Like,
yeah,
she kind of blows his whole, Sid Nancy's just a myth kind of thing. But I didn't know any better.
Right.
I knew nothing about that story. I actually, from the movie, I thought Sid died in the back of the taxi cab. that was my
out into the sunset in the
just like, hey, we found a dead punk rock star in the back seat. So that's kind of how I thought it was.
Well, what's interesting in the book is that the French woman that's the ongoing argument with the film, that DJ, that she's saying, well, the film is not totally accurate and stuff like that, and that's been like, as I know, members of the Sex Pistols hate the movie because they felt, either, Johnny Rotten hated the way he was portrayed, or as he said, the only thing they got right was the name Sid. I just thought, wow, he really, really hates it. And I like that I forgot about that they hated it so much. And then when you wrote that in the book, and then when I was looking up the making of this film after rewatching it again, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that it's a film that people are, I don't want to necessarily say divided on, because I mean, people could be divided on anything, but it's certainly, there is certainly those people in the boat who feel like, oh, this film is not accurate, and then those who don't care because it's such a really good film. But I just wanted to, before we get more into the film, I'm just curious, when you say it changed your life, was it because it inspired you to to write this story, or was there more to it than that?
No, yeah, that was it. No,
Yeah,
that was the first script I bought. So I ordered Sid and Nancy
the
off of
screenplay.
some I don't even remember how I found it, but it was this place on Highland Boulevard in Hollywood.
Oh wow.
I remember driving out there, but it was a post office box. So, but I got the script and I was reading it and I just laughed so hard. It was a lot different than the final cut of the movie. So you had a lot of scenes that it was like the third draft, not the final shooting
Okay.
draft, I guess, or they improvised on the set, which they had to do a lot.
Yeah, I read
Um,
that. I was reading
but
about
the
that yesterday.
script was, it enlightened me to a lot of the lines that I didn't get or the things I didn't understand. I didn't know when he says, "Is this Johnny Rotten?" No, I've only used it twice. I didn't know Johnny was a condom. So you kind of miss you kind of miss out on a lot of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But um so yeah, I would sit there, I'd walk around quoting that thing,
Wow.
just yeah, like I used to perform for people that movie.
Oh my God. I
I would
love it.
start at the beginning and do it for 90 minutes and people would just laugh their heads off.
Do
But
do
and I
do
could do it.
do you know what like do you know now, or did you even know then what it was about it that just fascinated you so much?
Yeah, yeah. We grew up kind of on Hollywood blockbuster movies. And here was a movie, nothing was spelled out for you.
Mm,
You know,
yeah, that's
I
true.
didn't know what was happening. There's scenes in the movie where it's like the same day, but you don't realize it's the same day. It just seems more sprawled out. And it took me multiple view. And I was watching this a lot. I mean, if it was on the shelf at the video store at the other night, I was taking it home.
Right.
Like and I was showing it to everybody. So yeah, it's it's just had such an amazing impact. Going to London and seeing the places from just kind of stumbling upon it by accident, which I kind of do in it's kind of what he does in the book. Um,
Yeah.
Acting in that movie is phenomenal.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oldman and Chloe Webb, they're so, I mean, it's not even like a good like not even it's not just good, like it's like mind blowing. It's like, how did they get to these lengths? And as an actor myself, like you, like to be able to just go into the rages they get into, or the way she was begging Sid to kill her towards the end, because she just couldn't get off the drugs, and just being high practically the entire film, while also finding moments of humor and excess and the childlike behavior. Like, that is really really hard. That's really hard. I don't know, they must have and I don't know about Chloe Webb, but I know Oldman, as I'm sure you know, like, got so skinny, and was hospitalized because
Yeah.
he lost so much weight. He was only eating like fish and very very little. And it's the irony is that this was such a big break for him in film anyways, and he didn't even want to do it. I
He
mean,
didn't want to do it.
he
That's
wasn't attracted to the
that's
script. He
crazy.
wasn't attracted to the punk rock scene of the UK in the 70s. He was much more interested in theater, and it was mainly because it was a good check, and his agent was like, "Oh, it's going to help your career." But and even apparently afterwards, he said he didn't think he was that good in it, and I'm like, I don't know how he thought that, because if you
The
look at,
guy blew out a snot bubble out of his nose. You don't
oh
see
my
that every
god,
day in acting.
yeah,
That's masterclass.
oh yeah, no, he's
Absolute masterclass.
when you see him in Sid and Nancy, like, he doesn't necessarily, if you look at a side by side picture of him and Sid, he doesn't necessarily look like the guy, but he captured the essence of that guy. I mean, I thought that the wardrobe and the hair, the makeup was impeccable. Like, they really got him closer to resemble him, but just the way he sang "My Way." If you look at a side by side of him singing it and the real Sid Vicious, it's stunning. I mean, he just nailed it.
Remember the first time you saw that scene and he pulled the gun out and started shooting the audience?
Yeah,
I remember that very vividly the first time I saw it, and I thought, what the hell is going on here? Like, what? that whole, I mean, seriously, that whole movie from start to finish is pretty wild.
It is,
And
yeah.
I only really learned of the truish story, within the last decade. That's a complicated, the whole story behind the real story and the whole story behind just getting that made. I mean, there's some really weird parallels to it and stuff.
Well,
Well, I'll broach this at the end. I want to get back to what you were asking.
no, I was just going to say that the beauty of the film, well, depending on how you look at it, is that you as you said, you only learned about the real story in the last decade, and it was they really took a chance in using a real life people and a real life story, but they didn't, as you said, it's not spelled out, so they don't go into how these people are hooked on drugs. You don't see their backstory, their upbringing. You don't necessarily, the punk rock scene is more of a backdrop to everything, so you don't know why this behavior was so um chaotic, and they're like animalistic and
Yeah.
impulsive and furious, and it's you don't know the roots of it. And then at the same time, when they go on that American tour and the band breaks up, you don't necessarily see how or why that happened, and but you still get the real essence of the people. And to me, it's so much more about the relationship between Sid and Nancy, like the fact that they became inseparable, the fact that they became totally in love with each other, that they couldn't live without each other, and that and of course the story of addiction. I mean, to me, it's more about just focusing on the way these people behave and what a drug like heroin does to you. I just thought it was really more about that. I don't know how you felt about it.
Well, I want to beg to differ with you just on one thing that you said, is that
Go ahead.
I remember when that. Okay, so the last scene where she goes, "What about the farewell drugs?" and she
Right.
cries,
Right.
and then the next scene, there's just this, doo, 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 and
Yes.
that helicopter and the bus is coming over the
Yeah.
thing. I'm
Yeah.
looking at that going, what is this? I
Yeah.
was just, again, and then Sid's writing the thing in his diary. How'd you spend all the day?
Yeah. Yeah.
HIT, dear mom, having a lovely, and then it just
Yeah.
kicks into the Sex Pistols. Man, I tell you what, I never get tired of it. I never get tired of that movie. I had a friend that owned a movie theater it was not far from here, but it was next door to where I lived. And he ran Sid and Nancy for a week, and I could hear it through my walls. So I had a Sid and Nancy party on Friday night where I had a bunch of my friends come over from high school, and we went into the theater, which was owned by my friend, and we took the first 3 rows, and a couple of us who really knew the movie were spitting out the dialogue, we're spitting beer on cue, and George is standing at the back, the owner, and he's just like wringing his hands, like, oh my gosh, I've got other paying people that are trying to watch this movie, and these guys think it's fucking horror. So long story short, that was the first time I realized that Sid and Nancy, the first 45 or 50 minutes are just anarchy, and
Yeah.
they're just throwing just all kinds of stuff at you. And when I got up to go to the bathroom and George's wringing his hands like, oh, you're killing me over here, I said, we'll quiet down now. The movie gets a lot darker and quieter now.
Oh
And
yeah.
it's true. Once you get to that New York part, man,
Oh yeah.
it's like it's like almost like a different movie.
Yeah. And I know that they originally wanted to shoot it as black and white, and of course the studio said no. So as a way to
Oh,
take
I
the
didn't know
color.
that.
You didn't know that, or you did?
No, I did not know
Oh,
that.
really?
That's interesting.
Yeah, I was
Yeah, I did not
reading
know
about
that.
it last night that the studio thought, oh, it's a little too artsy. Keep it in color. So as a way to still keep the black and white feel of it, if you notice, once they get to New York and their heroin addiction sinks deeper and deeper, there's hardly any color. It's like gray, and it's
Yeah. They're all
very
wearing
dark. And
black, and it's
it
it's
may as
true. I
well have been
never,
black
yeah.
and white. It reminded me of William Friedkin, the film he did with Pacino, Cruising. I mean, that film really is black and white. It has hardly any color, and this kind of looked like that in a lot of
Well,
ways.
the color's leather in that movie.
Yeah, exactly.
The color of leather.
Black, right? You know, that's all
for
you
Sid
need.
and Nancy. It's a lot of leather in Sid and Nancy too.
A lot of leather, a lot of black, a lot of dark blues, a lot of grays, and yeah, and so that's
and
how
her blonde, you know,
yeah,
Nancy's blonde shag,
big 70s blonde hair. But at the same time, they managed to discover so much humor. Like I found that even though it's very dark, there's a lot of funny, really funny stuff in there. Like particularly when they're in bed and you know she's going on about their woes, and he says, you know, oh, don't worry, Nancy, it'll be all right once we're in America. Like, we've been here for a week, and you see him stumbling, and he looks out the window, and he's just amazed, like, what am I? How did I get here? And what a performance from Oldman. And I saw that the first time I saw this about 14 years ago. That's one scene I laughed so hard at, and I could never forget to this day. And I actually, when I watched it the other night, it was the first time I've seen it in a number of years. And that was the scene that I'll never forget, was just him being stunned at the scenery and the environment of New York when he didn't even know he was in the States. And then I love the scene.
That's Chelsea Hotel, by the way.
Chelsea Hotel. Yeah.
I stayed there, and they've sealed that room up. So they don't get
right?
They don't get the looky-loos.
Yeah, I guess because she was killed there, as we see.
And you know, that's Iggy Pop walking up the stairs when he's showing there. Yeah.
Yeah, when they're hauling him off. Yeah, I like that. So you see the one guy walking up. We have a lot of great artists staying here. Meanwhile, like Sid is passed out at the top of the stairs, and they're dragging him off. Another scene that I always laugh so hard at is they go to Nancy's grandparents' house with the whole family, and of course, you know, he doesn't even have a shirt on, and everyone else like it's somewhat nicely. It's not like they're overly dressed, but you know, they got a shirt on. Let's put it that way. And the grandfather turns to Sid and says, "So, what are your plans with Nancy?" And he goes,
we're not going to go to America.
And he's like, "We're going to go out in a blaze of glory." And I just thought, oh my God. That I remember was another real laugh out loud moment. But it takes, as we said earlier, it takes phenomenal actors to be able to go so dark, so deep. I mean, that scene where they begin to fall in love, and she calls her parents when they were in England for money because she says that they're got married. And then she starts screaming at her mother because her mother says you're going to use it on drugs, and she smashes the window. And I just kept thinking, what could bring someone to get that mad that they, you know, but when you need drugs, right? That's the addiction just
even at the best of times, that's still going to take 2 days for her to get. It's not going to solve anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that, I mean, and apparently it was a prop glass and everything, but then she accidentally hit it so hard that she ended up hitting like a real window and smashing it. But yeah, just the rage and the violence, like they can just, boom, they could flip. Like if someone pissed him off, you know, you see early in the film, they mention a journalist who gave them a bad review and he hits him with his face. And, but, you know, I don't know if it's so much of a bad thing in the film, because sure enough, when I'm done the movie, I think to myself, well, what about, how did this band become so good if this guy could barely play the bass? And then how did his solo career even start? Who would want to give him a solo career? So again, they don't answer those questions. So but it doesn't matter to me. It's just like, okay, well, this is what happened. And sure enough, I think once you Google the times, you get an understanding of what punk rock was about, that it was more about the anarchy, and in a way they were sort of like trying to kill rock and roll by not intentionally playing badly or cutting themselves on stage.
No more stadium rock.
Exactly. And, you know, and fighting with the crowd. So yeah, I mean, for someone, you know, again, they don't tell you why this is all happening. I know some people have a problem with that, but I agree with you.
No,
to me, it doesn't matter at all.
No,
Yeah,
I love that was I that's what sets it apart. I wrote a I wrote a review on this British film industry thing where I compared Sid and Nancy to Citizen Kane, and I thought I made a compelling argument. It's about a flashback, it's about, love of something, and yeah, the British shot me down on that one. But anyway,
they were like, no,
but
sorry.
that scene in the when they're in the office and they're all kicked back, and Nancy calls and gets Phoebe, and she picks up the phone and it's like, it's Spunkin, which is hilarious because spunk. So
So
she
good.
wants a sweet. Oh, she wants a sweet. I want a sweet as well.
Yeah,
There's just
they're like kids. They turn it, or even like with his action figure. That one scene he can't find his little a toy
flying
of his
in
as a
Telly
kid.
Savalas,
Yeah.
the action man. I
Oh my
quote that
God.
movie so much that my wife hates it when I say all things will be much better when we get to America. She hates when I say that.
Oh my
I
God.
always pick up my daughter to move her to her bed, and I go, flying in Telly Savalas. Like that. I love that movie. It's just
Yeah. It's got everything. Tragedy,
it
comedy,
really
excess.
does, man.
It's
It
got
really
everything.
has everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's Shakespearean. It's got it all.
Yeah. And like I said, it does get you interested in like, okay, what the hell, what was going on in the 70s that, that this could happen. And if you read about the real Sid Vicious, like his mother was a heroin addict, his father had abandoned them. So you then start to understand where this is coming from.
Yeah.
But yeah, what a time. It's really, really stunning. And no one necessarily says anything profound or deep, and which I like about it. It's pure behavior. It's what they say often is, I mean, I think the most profound thing Sid says is when he goes to those kids and stops the fight, and he's like, hey, cut it out. I think that was the only time I saw him sort of somewhat straight and not
Who the
not
hell do you
high.
think you are, Sid
Yeah.
Vicious?
That was so good.
Even that scene where they just the kids speed run away. Come on, you just don't see that in
Yeah,
movies, man.
no, no.
Alex Cox is a brilliant genius, and he sort of shot himself in the foot a few times. But with that and Repo Man,
Yeah.
I mean, those two movies, he has cemented himself in filmdom history.
Yeah.
Just two masterful pieces of work. And the Repo Man was written at UCLA. It was his UCLA thesis.
Oh, I didn't know
You
that.
know, yeah, just like Highlander was his UCLA thesis, just like Harold and Maude was his UCLA thesis.
Right.
Those are my
Right.
3 favorite movies, and they're all riddled throughout my book.
The real story is that they don't actually know if he did it, if he stabbed her. And I thought they handled that quite well in the film, because they made it look as though she was telling him to do it, and in a fit of rage he did it. So which is Sid Vicious, as I read, apparently he had said he stabbed her, but he didn't mean to kill her, which you kind of see in the film. When he does stab her, it was just this fit of rage, and then that was it. But then he says he didn't do it, so his stories kept conflicting, and there was also a party going on there, and this is of course the real story. And once he died, awaiting trial, they dropped the investigation. So to this day, it's totally unknown. So I thought the way
I don't know if it's totally unknown. And I'll tell
you
you
know more
why.
about it. I don't know much.
I'll tell you what I know and what I theorize. And I'm not a big conspiracy theorist per se, but I had a flatmate that met Johnny Rotten at I think it was like the King's Head in Santa Monica. And he went back to Johnny's house. And this is a pretty trustful guy, so I don't quite doubt the story. But he never told me, but he says that Johnny told him that he swore him to secrecy, which is ironic because, as the joke in my book is, Brits don't keep secrets for anything. I mean, that's like it's a myth. So he never told me, but I have delved further into that story, and my belief, and I'm not the only one, the last person to see him was the actor Rocket's Red Glare from Down by Law and Big, and he
Oh
was
yeah, yeah.
Steve Buscemi's comedy partner for a bit. I'm pretty sure Rockets did it, and there's some documentaries
Oh,
out there that kind of point towards that. And I think that's why he had that sort of mythical thing in movies where he's playing in Down by Law, and I put a lot of weight behind that, especially being the last person to see, and the heroin dealer that he was, and the way
right.
she acted, and Sid being passed out, and not knowing. I think that makes more sense to me.
Do I have that right, that there were people in the apartment, like in the real
There were
story,
people going through.
in
It
and
wasn't
out,
a.
right?
It was the hotel room at the Chelsea. So people
Right,
were going in and out all the time. Sid
right.
was apparently passed out from different medications, and probably he had a confrontation with Nancy. I mean, good a story as any.
Right.
And there's a further theory that when Sid was out on parole, and he had a horrible time at Rikers Island. Skinny little English boy. He did not fare well. I'll leave it at
Oh
that.
God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So his mother scored for him the night that he died. And from what I understand, and this may be a little conspiracy theorist-ish, the guy that sold her that was the guy that killed Nancy,
Oh.
and kind of thought that Sid was the one thing that could sort of bring him down and fix, set up a lethal dose. Put it that way.
I see. I
That's
see.
it's all it. It's just as good as JFK, I guess.
Right. Right. Is this like a story? Is this one of those
There's
unsolved
you could.
stories that
I mean,
people talk
if
about a lot? Like kind of
no,
like
there's
who
like
killed Kurt Cobain? Like,
there's a couple documentaries about it. Yeah,
okay, I'll have to
exactly.
look
Yeah,
them up.
there's a couple of them. I watched one where they hinted about it, but I think I saw another one where it was that same one. I can't remember. There's a couple out there.
I wonder why the investigators would have dropped it at the time. Who knows, right? I guess maybe they didn't
Yeah.
care. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, her mother's from Pennsylvania, and it's a
Right.
New York crime,
Right.
and there was no love lost between her and her daughter, and she wrote that book, told about Nancy, how she was an absolute terror literally from the day she was born. They had just
Her
never
mother,
heard
her real mother.
they had never heard a girl scream so much.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. It's called something like it's Deborah Spungen wrote it. I can't remember the
Oh,
name of
wow.
it. It's something like no one gets out of here alive, but
I
not
see.
obviously
Yeah.
not that one. But
Yeah.
yeah, it
It
was.
must have been some mental health issues that were never diagnosed, possibly for
Yeah,
both of them,
well,
right?
you would think with that kind of
Yeah.
attitude.
Yeah. Yeah. But of course, back then they didn't have the awareness
No,
that we do
no.
now. But no, it's such a good movie. I was glad I saw it again because I had a very different experience this time. It was more just it just kind of goes right into your gut. It just my mind just goes off, and I'm just in this world. And when it's over, it's kind of hard to step out of it. And I love sort of the surreal nature of it because you got that one scene which I don't really know what it's about, other than perhaps their self-destructive nature, the one you referred to earlier, where he's shooting everybody after he sings My Way. And then at the end, I mean, I think that's a little more obvious, and going off into the sunset, he killed her, so now it's
Right.
like they're back together, as a way to kill her was a way to put them back together, so to speak, in some kind of, that he'll be next, he'll be next to join her, and they'll go off into the sunset.
Right. She
Yeah.
comes back in the dress, and the scene just prior to that where he's dancing with the kids, and they're
Oh, that's
dancing to
great. Yeah.
man, that's
Eating a
I mean
pizza,
that's
he loved pizza, as we saw in the film.
throws the table over, walks outside. Don't be so suck up, yeah, don't be so sad. He's like
Oh God.
Casey and the Sunshine Band. I mean,
Yes.
just on pure inventiveness for taking a story. I mean, I've never really seen anything like that until Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which I
Right.
rewatched 2 nights ago. and I'm reading the book. You just don't see that sort of blending of fantasy and fact done that much and done that well. And I think they're really just both testaments to the directors and the writers of those, you know. I put Alex Cox up against Quentin Tarantino any day of the week because of those two movies, Repo Man and Sid and Nancy. I bought Walker the other day and watched that.
I gotta see that.
That's a little undersung. I mean, I was thrown by it the first time I watched it. I wasn't much less thrown, but I was more captivated this time. Right. I love going and revisiting movies that I saw a long time ago, didn't have much of a thought process on, and being older now and just going, wow, you know, that I wouldn't have got that at 19, 20, 21, you know. That's the beauty of these things, man. You can go revisit them and just get a whole different perspective on it. And Sid and Nancy will do that. You know, I was going to put it on and I thought, man, I don't need to put this on. I've seen it. I've probably never seen any movie more than Sid and Nancy.
Right. Yeah. You know it. So it's like in your blood at this point.
I felt like I'm a film professor with that movie. No, you have to watch this. Watch this. And I used to really bug people. Watch this. Yeah, it's a fun movie.
Yeah.
Really masterful. Maybe not as good as Citizen Kane, but you know, I'll still put it up there.
No, I agree. I really, really love it. I you know, not to put a downer on our talk, but I've never really cared for Tarantino. And the way in which he rewrites history to me pops out much more. Whereas this is sort of like he's still staying within what happened. It's just really the ending, and he doesn't really go into the details of the whys and the backstories, right? Whereas when I see the Tarantino films, I'm like, okay, like I feel as though I totally am outside of it because I know you know, all these things are not true. But I do understand that that's part of his self-conscious filmmaking, that you're kind of aware that you're watching a fan. It's not, sometimes for me it works very well, not always, depending on who did it. But I thought, you know, you mentioned Shakespeare earlier, like, but maybe he will be, you know, you know, shifting in his grave because you know, he took real characters, Richard III, Julius Caesar, and you know, those stories are generally true, but the Richard III in his play is not necessarily the real guy, you know. So I'm sure back then people were thinking, well, wait a minute. So, which is interesting. It's you know, I know people have different thoughts on when you take these real life stories and, you know, what you do with it and where, but I just think this one works beautifully. I think it's a great film. So I'm glad we were able to talk about it today and talk about your really fun read. I really enjoyed it. Bad English the Third, the Mostly True Tales of a Son of a Brit. And I guess people can pretty much get this anywhere, right? On Amazon,
Walmart, Barnes and Noble.
Yeah.
Come stop by. I probably have a copy somewhere lying around.
Great. Okay, great. Well, Michael, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Again, thank you for the book, and thanks for taking the time to talk to me about your passion for Sid and Nancy and more about the content and the behind the story of how you came to write this book. So thanks so much. I hope that you could come again sometime.
Thank you, Robert. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the kind words, and I would love to come back.
Thank you so much, everyone, for watching and or listening. If you are currently listening to my YouTube channel on the audio version of the podcast and you've run out of episodes to listen to, head over to the YouTube channel where every single episode that I have ever recorded can be found, youtube.com/Robert Bellissimo at the movies. I also want to thank all of my members on Patreon for all of their support. If you are interested in becoming a member of my Patreon, head over to the link patreon.com/Robert Bellissimo at the movies for full details. Patreon is bonus content that I create month in and month out, and it is based on polls that I put out at the beginning of every single month, which as a member, you will very much have access to vote on, which means that you will be part of the decision-making as to what I do on Patreon month in and month out. So head over to the link for full details. I also want to mention that if you want to, you can leave a donation to my YouTube video podcast at Ko-fi.com/Robert youtube.com/Robert Bellissimo at the movies. It's very easy to do so, and the link is in the description box down below. And lastly, if this is your first time here on my YouTube video podcast, please consider subscribing to my channel by pressing on the Robert Bellissimo at the movies logo. You will see it floating above my head here in the top left corner to your top left in just a second. Just click on that and then click the bell in order to get a notification every time I release one of my new episodes or when I go live. Thank you so much, everyone. I will see you in the next episode.